Hey there, how's it going?
Hi, welcome. Excited to be here with everyone today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us for our next episode of our podcast, Take the Lead, Change the Game. I'm Mindy Galati here with Lindsay Gafford Gray. We're going to talk about what does success mean? How do you define success? We're going to dive into this topic today. We are with Safra Leadership, excited to bring you another interesting podcast, some of our thoughts, help you all grow in your career as leaders. Safra is really focused on empowering women leaders, women professionals in their careers and their leadership through coaching cohorts and workshops. And excited to just sort of dive in. And we're going to really talk today about success from our personal stories. We're going to talk about how we've had to look at success along our careers, redefining success and what that looks like. And we'd love to invite you to comment. So you can always comment and we can answer questions. If you have questions for us during this live stream, please put them in the chat. Please comment. And if not, you can reach out to us separately and ask your questions and give us any feedback that you may have. So Lindsay, let's talk about success, kind of our early views on success, and tell me your personal story.
Yeah, so, one of the things I think about when I think about defining success, especially professionally in my legal career, that probably resonates with you as well, Mindy, is being a public defender. That is a very quick way to have to redefine success, right? Because if you walk in as a public defender and you say, well, success to me is that I am going to win every trial, you're setting yourself up for a world of hurt and a world of perceived failure. When in fact, oftentimes as a public defender and as a defense attorney generally, or a civil attorney, is I'm going to get the best, plea bargain for my client or the best settlement for my client. Or I'm going to win on this partial defense, or whatever it might be. Because if perfection is the standard in terms of winning every time, it's not gonna work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some of you who are listening are attorneys, so this will resonate. But even if you're not an attorney, I think you can appreciate sort of our vantage point, which is sometimes you're put into a position, a career, a role where winning or being quote unquote successful is really not in the cards. I mean, sometimes I've met a lot of executives who take on really problematic roles because they got to turn a company around, or a company's facing bankruptcy, and there's really no winning a lot of the times. But as a public defender, I remember I would say I have a lot of perfectionist tendencies. And probably within the first month of being a public defender, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to address that, because that's not going to work here. I mean, oftentimes I would quite literally walk into a jury trial, like actual ready to pick a jury, and I would only be prepared to pick the jury, and just kind of be wishing and hoping we didn't get to opening statements, because I wasn't ready yet, because you are so busy as a public defender. And it made it exciting, and I felt like it brought out my best traits to sort of fly by the seat of my pants. But what I used to tell people is I would say, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, but I don't have any pants. Like, there was no, it was less than being prepared. And so I do think being a public defender, or the corollary, kind of being in a leadership position, or a position where you're not going to have traditional success, you're not going to win, things aren't going to be perfect, everything's not going to look nice. I actually am very, very grateful for that experience, because it really gave me a different way to view success very early on, the first, part of my legal career, that I had never had before. I was the straight A student, the one who always got the straight A's, report cards. And so it was interesting to move into a space where that was quite literally not possible to be perfect in public defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to tell people that, imagine the train is coming for your client, and your job is to lie down in front of the train. And sometimes the train will stop, and sometimes it'll just slow down just enough, but I also think that there's a way, and we talk about this, when we talk about traditional success of perfection, I don't think we mean like, let's redefine success so that like we can stomach it, right? Like there is a way to define success that means like holistic fulfillment for ourselves too, not just effectiveness, right?
Mhm.
I loved being able to walk beside people and give a voice to them when they otherwise wouldn't have any defense, right?
Mhm.
And that brought deep meaning to me and my life, but I wasn't going to win every trial. And that was okay with me. Not only was it just okay, but it made me deeply satisfied.
Yeah. And Lindsay, one thing was sort of the way that I looked at success as a public defender was also, am I showing the world the humanity of this person? So a lot of times we would do jury trials that we knew we were never going to win. And the goal was not necessarily to win because we weren't going to. But people need to be heard. People need to share their story. People are looking for validation. And so part of what I found success was, did I make this person sitting next to me or across from me in the jail, did I make them feel seen, valued, heard, loved? It was actually one of the hardest parts of me being a public defender because I loved my clients. I truly did. And I love their families. But that was success to me, was a lot of times we weren't going to win. But the success was, will this person leave knowing that somebody cared about them? Will this person leave knowing that their side was shared? And life is complicated. And so success is complicated. And also, I think that for all of us in sort of these tough careers, whether it's law or outside of law, that can be, complex in sort of, how do you get your bearings on success? I really think it's looking back on that holistic approach and that holistic vision. And that's kind of what we want to talk about too, is sort of where our childhood views of success or our early careers versus kind of now and how we've navigated that. So Lindsay, I would love to know, just like when you think back to what success maybe used to mean to you, kind of what was that? Like, what were the early ideas of success for you and what did it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like we're similar, right? Straight A's, like perfection essentially. And I'm seeing a lot of this play out now with my own kids, not only at school, but they are both competitive rock climbers. And, there's often been a standard set at competitions where you have to get to the top of every route on the first try. Perfection is the standard. And if it takes you 2 times to get a route, then you're a failure. And this is something that has been a huge challenge for me and for other parents in rock climbing, but I also think is like a huge challenge with parenting in the United States today. I mean, when you take writing a paper, for example, like in the United States, by and large, you write a paper and like a lot of kids are just expecting that like 100% smiley face. Whereas like in many other countries, you write a paper and you get it back and it's like covered in red ink. And then at the bottom, it's like, nice job, and so it like creates an impossible standard for us to sustain in everything because we're all making mistakes all the time. But it also like severely diminishes our risk tolerance, which is going to limit what we're willing to do to change the world, right? The boundaries that we're willing to push and the risks that we're willing to take because we don't want to fail.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was sort of my old frame. And I'm seeing it now again play out with my own kids that I'm really hoping I have and continue to redefine for myself and that I help them see from an earlier age than I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting you bring this up. I was just listening to a book and the statistic is that 94% of women CEOs and executives played a sport as a kid. So 94%. So like women's sports are really important. And maybe we'll do a whole podcast on women's sports, but they're super important. But I think the value of sports can be that you do lose and that you aren't perfect. But there's been a trend, I will say, and there's a lot written about this. Like you can go look this up, is there's a big pushback right now on these competitive organized kids sports. Whereas when we were growing up, there was a lot of more recreational opportunities. So everybody had a chance to play, and it wasn't such a so dedicated to success and to winning. It was more fun. And it's interesting because I think there's a there's a lot to unpack for us as our, what did we view success as a child versus now. When I do a lot of leadership coaching, one thing I ask is like, how do you define success? And I don't just tell me what comes off the top of your head. Like, go do some homework, write about it, think about it. Because we have our initial impressions of success. For me, it was straight A's, perfect everything. Like everything needed to be great and perfect. And if I got a B, it was like the end of my life. And I've had to go back and say, like, where did that come from and what was that? But I do think sports, I do think experiences where you will lose are really important. And I think that raising kids or raising people on your team, it's important to give that feedback. And one other thing I want to say is this whole concept of like giving back the paper with it all marked up and, hey, good job, like maybe correct these things. It's actually what employees are looking for now. So I can't tell you how much of my time, hours upon hours a week, is dedicated to helping, whether it's managing partners of law firms, executive teams, leadership teams, learn how to give better feedback, because people actually really want feedback. Now, it may hit against that perfectionism, but what they do is they want to know where they stand. They want to know, how do I get better? And if we always just say 100% good job or not great, we're not going to give you another opportunity. You don't let people grow. You don't let people learn to take risks. And there's a lot built into that concept, which we can talk about in other sessions. But I think it's important to always note, like, what did success mean to you? What did it look like? Was it money? Was it title? Was it awards? Was it, reputation? What was it in the past? And then where are you at today? So, do you have any like stories or examples of where you have seen your definition of success really change over time?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I had kids. Like, I mean, I feel like for many, many women, that's like a critical redefining of success, because, I am a firm believer that, like, we cannot work 100 hours a week and parent 40 hours a week and because there's just literally not enough hours in the day. And so we have to make calculated decisions about balancing our lives and our responsibilities. And so, for me, I was in a privileged place where when we had kids, I started with sort of like a flex work schedule and started to work for myself, which really redefined my success for sure, because I became an entrepreneur. I was no longer in criminal defense. I started in a new area of law, and had to really think about like who I was in my identity and what I was after. And I still to this day have to say that I hear narratives, right? Like the little voice in my head of like, oh, you could/should make more money, or whatever it is. And I have to actively counteract those and be like, but I get to do all of these things that actually genuinely make me happy, So for me, I have to continuously sort of redefine success and also acknowledge the voices in my head and either accept them or reject them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it is important, and I would encourage everyone that at least once a year, but I like to do it quarterly, is like really look at what success means for me now. I was just on the phone with someone yesterday who is a friend of mine who has their JD, went to law school, and is looking to take the bar. And we were having this conversation of like, well, what is success now for you? And I think going back and asking yourself that is so important, because just like you, Lindsay, I transitioned out of being a public defender to open my own practice. And that was like the entrepreneurial journey I knew I wanted to go on. And it was fantastic. But success was still very much tied to, making money, getting clients, winning cases, these kinds of things still. But when the big sort of hit to ego, hit to like, maybe just like, who am I really, was when I had kids. And I had two kids very close together, not really planned that way. But I realized like I couldn't do, criminal offense trial work with two kids that were that small. So I was going to take a break. And I was, lucky enough, privileged enough to be able to do that. But I found myself, that's where my idea of success got challenged again. So the first was really as a public defender, but then as a stay-at-home mom for about, 2.5 years was like, okay, well, what is success here? Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm still like ready to go into battle, but now I'm like nursing two children at the same time. And so success became like, are they getting fed? Am I getting enough sleep? And what I think is beautiful, because this isn't, this applies to if you don't have kids. I think it's always important and it's really for self-care to define, redefine, refine what success looks like, so that it's something that you can accomplish. If you start a business and you say, I want to make $50 million this year, and that's what success looks like, I'm not saying that's a bad goal, but I'm saying that probably shouldn't be your marker of success, because it's not going to be kind to yourself. I think that you have to go back and say, okay, I want my business to be a $50 million business, or I want to be the CEO of this company, or I want to be the managing partner of this law firm. Fantastic. But in between there, you want to be looking at what success looks like in shorter time increments. And for me, mine shifted, as a public defender, as an entrepreneur, as a mom, then back to starting a new entrepreneurial venture 10 years ago, and really thinking about, sort of my bias, my assumptions about success versus reality, versus how do I keep, redefining it as I get older and as there's different, more important things in my life than maybe there were before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm in talks with a good friend right now who is, really taking on some burdens of caregiving responsibilities for her parents, which I know that many of us, struggle with, and has been in sort of the grinded out law firm setting and really needs a change because cannot do all the things, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that has been a huge challenge to sort of wrap the head around, like, what does this mean for me and who I am and how I measure my own value? Because mm-hmm. I've measured it by one standard the whole time, and it has fundamentally shifted and will fundamentally shift even more significantly as I make these changes that I just know I have to make.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about sort of this concept of, success viewed externally, like external validation, and then sort of this internal fulfillment? Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I was talking to someone yesterday, and something she was saying to me was super wise, in that so many times with women, and even entrepreneurial women in like fairly high-powered situations, so much of our life is dedicated to like pleasing others, right? What is my VC firm, shareholders gonna say, or, my COO, or, my kid's teacher, or whatever. Like, still so much is dedicated to how others view us, to the point where oftentimes like we don't even know ourselves, and we don't even know what we want our business to look like, because we're listening to everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so for me, one thing I did this spring, which I really enjoyed, was like doing my own values, like getting clear on like, okay, I've been a public defender, I've been an immigration law firm owner, I started a nonprofit, and now I'm, doing leadership coaching. Like, what are the through lines there of mm-hmm. my core values? And then taking there and crafting my own personal mission statement, right? Like, what am I about? Like, not just what do I do, but like, what am I about, and what difference do I want to make in the world as mm-hmm. it matters to me? Mm-hmm. And that really helped me sort of like set my North Star, so that I can say, okay, well, this task or this responsibility, like, is it in furtherance of the mission? And that helped me sort of redefine my own success, but also like make sure that it was mine and not anybody else's.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I think there is, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting external validation if it's important to you. Like all of us are different. But I do think that, as you grow in life, and if you're lucky enough that you get to age through life, like I do think the internal fulfillment becomes much more important. I definitely, like when I said I took the hit to the ego, that was where external validation was important to me in my 20s, of just like, oh, I'm a lawyer. Like I was proud of myself and I liked that people knew that. Like, and I liked when my boss would pat me on the back, and I loved when I win a trial. I mean, I would run up and down that hallway with that external validation. But as I've gotten older, it's like the thing that I crave is like the internal fulfillment. And one thing that I do, like I love this mission statement, your personal values, your mission statement. Like I think we need to do that. And it's okay if it changes. Like,
yeah,
we should change. So our values are like, that should change over time. Maybe not your moral compass necessarily, but your values and the things you prioritize should change. What I do, and I don't have my list right in front of me to do it quickly with y'all, but I have something called my 10 circles. And what I did was, like about a year ago, I drew a circle and it said Mindy. And then around it, I drew circles for all the things that were really, really like important in my life. And every month, I just did it September 1st. I did it on Monday. I go and I look at like, how am I doing in that circle? So my circles are things like my kids is a circle, my finances, my home, my family, my friends. One of my circles is service. Like I want to be in service of others. Joy is something I work on all the time, this little joy, my relationship with my partner, a couple others. And so what I do is that sort of to me is like success. My success is when I look at those 10 circles, how healthy are each of those circles? That's my success. But here with that is they're not always great. Like
not all of them are going to be 10.
I never have yet had a month since I started this in August of 2024. I've never had a circle. And I've showed some of y'all who are listening, you've seen my 10 circles because I carried around on a notepad with me. But I've never yet had all 10 circles be like perfect. Everything's wonderful, right? To me, that's like the complexity of life is like, one of those circles may be like I have, one of my circles is my health. And so like my health is good. Like I'm like, and that may be green and happy and great. And then maybe something's going on with my kids. Like my kids, I'm going through the teenage years. And so I've had a lot of the teenage heartbreak with my son. And so I wouldn't say that circle always feels fantastic. Definitely not perfect. And so what I like about that approach though, is it's like a visual for me to say like, I'm going to redefine success in a more complex way. And I may be super successful in 5 of those circles, but 4 of those circles are and one of those circles is like red alert, timeout. We got to do something about it. And so I think that it's important for us, however this works for you. You did your values, your personal mission statement. I got my 10 circles. There's lots of ways to do this. The most important thing is to give yourself the time, the space to sit down and think about it, because the way you achieve real success is by identifying what it looks like for you now, not backwards and not what your parents want or your friends, but like what it looks like for you now.
One of the things, a slide I like to have when I give presentations on leadership is who is on the board of directors for your life. And obviously you have to be at the center of it. You're running the ship, but there are other voices that you can consider, not that get to make decisions, but like those voices can be ones that we rely on, bounce ideas off of, and weigh as we're making decisions about our lives, because sometimes those people know us in that moment better than we know ourselves and can reflect back to us things we've said or things we've done for us to take and ruminate on. But I think the important part after considering who's on the board of directors of your life is realizing that everyone else is not.
Yeah.
And so, really taking that and drawing some boundaries around, who you're going to listen to and to what extent, and ultimately know that you are the decision maker and the captain of the ship of your own life.
Yeah. And that's that external validation. Like, I think it's important for a lot of people to have that validation externally, but being mindful of who matters. Does every voice have equal weight? It should not. And I also, I also think that having your personal board of directors or having people that give you real talk, when it comes to defining success, go ask them too.
Yeah.
Like, do you think I'm successful from your vantage point, and why? Like, do I appear successful to you? Why? And then sometimes I, as an entrepreneur, you're always like, at least for me, it's like, I'm always hustling. I'm always like, go hard, go home, win, like get out there. And I often don't see my success. And I often need my people around me to be like, hey, you're really doing great, because I need someone to pull me aside and say, I see you accomplishing things. Good job. That's why, how we define success is important, but we also need to have people around us that help us have some realistic take and realistic perspective on how we're doing. Because for those of us who grew up with success equals perfectionism, success is straight A's, high achieving, we need people around us to bring us back to earth a little bit sometimes too. So.
Yeah. Both in like you're doing a great job, and great does not equal perfect, right?
Yes. Yeah. Anything, kind of this conversation opens up a lot of doors, I think, to other, ideas, questions maybe people have, but Lindsay, for you, I guess, what's one reflection you want to share with everybody about what you've learned about success?
Ooh, I mean, aside from what we've already talked about, that's tough. I think a big thing for me that we've sort of touched on, but I'll say it more directly, is there are seasons of our lives where it looks different.
Mm-hmm.
And the stay-at-home mom piece, I stayed at home for about 9 or 10 months full-time, and then I went back part-time, looks very different. And it's okay to say midstream, this is not working for me. Like, I thought this is what success meant, but actually it doesn't mean that for me. And an example of that is when I had my immigration firm in Austin, Austin has an amazing network of immigration attorneys. And so I was really trying to figure out like where my space was, right? Because it's a fairly saturated space, but not just saturated with like bodies, saturated with really good lawyers. And so I started doing more business immigration because I found this sort of like gap of like smaller employers that needed assistance, or even employees that needed consultations about what their options were. And I think part of the reason I did that was, one, I felt there was a gap, but two, I also like the little like money fairy was in my head and was like, well, this will help you gain success, which equals, right, like a certain amount of money. And what I found as I got going was, yes, true. And it was not fulfilling me in the way that I had hoped. And ultimately, like, I ended up, down the road a little ways in a good position to start scaling down my practice and to start Vicina, which is the nonprofit that I founded. And for me, giving myself that permission as opposed to just allowing inertia to continue is super important. And it doesn't have to be that way for everyone in terms of changes like, oh, I'm going to like quit my job and go do something else. Like, maybe it means that like you work outside for 2 hours a day because you're finding like the mental health piece challenging, or like there are many levers we can pull. Some are huge like that, and some are much smaller, in order to sort of like redefine and reshape success to meet our true selves.
Yeah. I love that. The thing I'll say kind of in conclusion of sort of what I've learned about success is, again, we've talked a lot about different aspects, but to me, it is about I feel the most successful when I'm doing what I know I was put here to do. When I align my talents with my passion, with my wisdom. And that definitely has changed. And so allowing my success to, me to drive my success by really knowing who I am at this time in these different seasons, like you put it. I think that's really important to success. It's not stagnant. It's not always the same. And I think we're often too hard on ourselves of how successful we are. So great conversation. Thanks everyone for joining us. And we'll be back next week. Lindsay, I think we'll dive in a little bit more about success next week as this is a big topic. Any closing thoughts you have?
Not now, and we're over the 30-minute mark, so we should probably cut it off.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.